This feeling of global responsibility that you're encouraging, and also Dr. Ramanathan, you're also talking about this idea to sort of see the world as one place and to not see it with divisions, but rather those of us who have power to make a change and those of us who don't, who are the overwhelming majority. It reminds me of an Inuit leader who said to me, Aqualuk on Greenland, when I was interviewing him, he said, "Why should my people," who, by the way, are dying because they're falling through melting ice that they never saw before, who aren't able to hunt for seal as they used to because the ice is melting so quickly. He said, "Why should my people pay the price for your lifestyle?" He said, "We are the canary in the gold mine, and we are telling you the earth is warming. It's warming fastest here, and it's coming to you. For all of our sakes, the sake of our world, but for your children and for your children's children, it's time to act now." Which brings us to Isabella, I should call you Professor Velicogna. You have been looking at the data, and it's hard for people to understand, and I would hope that you could help us understand how fast the melt is happening. We've been seeing melt, and people who've argued against whether climate change is happening have said, well, there's always has been some up and down with melting. But the 97% of scientists of whom you're, world climate scientists, of whom you are a member, who agree that climate change is not only happening, it's already started, have indicated that there's a degree of melt that's happening that's so fast that we're seeing in Antarctica and we're seeing in Greenland, which is inside the Arctic Circle, that it does not reflect anything we've seen before. Can you help us understand what your science is discovering?
So, what we know, we have now, we're very lucky for this, 40 years of modern observation. And what this tells us, the ice is from the ice sheet that is melting in the ocean is really melting faster than we would have ever thought, based on what we knew before. And this is very important because it's not based on a short period, it's a relatively, long period. And we're seeing, and we know that things can happen very fast on our planet. We know that when, in the past, when our planet was about, almost as warm as, is, we are almost there, we are almost at the same temperature, the ice sheets melt a lot, and sea level was 5 to 6 meters higher. So we know we're kind of heading there. We don't know how fast this is going to happen because it's complicated to predict what the glaciers are going to do. But we know that this is happening, and because the observations are telling us, what we know for sure, for example, is that by the end of the century, we're going to have more than 1 meter of sea level rise, maybe 2. And this is like a big impact. You were saying before, it's hard for people to imagine. And so, for example, with 1 meter of sea level, you're going to have, it's going to change completely the coastal region, and so the continent are going to be completely different shape. And for example, it's going to have a big impact on infrastructure and on the coastal region, the people that live in the coastal region. And for people that are here, we don't think, displacing is relatively easy. But for example, 1 meter with about 1 meter of sea level, if we go, the San Francisco airport would be underwater. Oakland airport would be underwater, which means the Bay Area doesn't have any airport anymore. The main port here, the harbor, like LA and Long Beach would be flooded. And that's a big deal because about half of the containers that come to the US are from coming to those ports, which means that this will not affect only California, it would affect the entire US, the entire world, because we are that goes from here, and that's a big deal. And of course, as His Holiness was saying, the impact of this is going to be much tougher and hardest for the people, for the poor people, because we're going to have to displace a lot of population, and they're going to have to relocate, and it's not easy to change for the poorest people. And like, for example, sometimes they're going to have to leave their home, they're going to have to leave their country, and they may not have a country where to go. And this is, for example, the people in Bangladesh. Sea level there is going to impact, millions of people, and it's going to be, and I think that, we really have to realize that, what, His Holiness and, you were saying, that is really like they are going to be, the weaker people, the poorest, the kids, the elderly are going to be the people that are going to be affected more. And so we have to just really have compassion.
You're not just talking about sea level rise, we're talking about warming that causes changes in terms of mosquitoes and disease changing. In other words, is there any doubt that large numbers of people will die if nothing is done?
Well, I think that we're adding, the changes are going to be, I would say that there is not, because I don't see how, for sure it's going to have a big impact in terms of, we're going to have flooded region, and so you're going to have more disease, they're going to spread, it's going to be really, a very strong impact. We're going to have more extreme weather event. This is, we know that. We're going to have more floods, more drought, more extreme, weather, big heat wave. Now we had a heat wave, it's like just talking in India and in Europe, we have a big one. But those events will going to be impacting especially, the elderly people, the kids, and the young people, and the poor people. And, I think that, for example, we have, the drought that we have in California. Everybody has heard about this in the news. And what we know, it's been like a long period. And, what we know from the climate model, the model tells us that, this region is going to become drier in the future. It's going to be, and so this process are going to persist, which means that it's going to impact, the economy, and it's going to impact, all, the society, in the region. The Himalaya glacier, I think they're like a striking, evidence. But, because we are talking about ice melting in the ice sheets, and that's going to, a big effect is going to be on sea level. But of course, if mountain glaciers are going to disappear, we are observing that they are disappearing. The data tell us, they are decreasing, they extend. Now we have an amazing set of tools and observation. We're very lucky, and they're showing us that they are decreasing, and they're not just going to raise sea level. The biggest impact is they are a very important essential water supply for drinking and agriculture for a lot of regions. For example, the Himalaya or the Andes are like, I think, the best example of this, where it's really going to have a big impact. And so all those observations together, I don't think there is any doubt. I think that what we have, respect to what we used to have, is that the science, climate change is solid, is mature. What we have now, we have observation that show us the changes are occurring. They are very big, very large, and we should just, we should worry about, because they're going to have like consequences. And they may not happen super fast, but they're very easy also to mitigate, to find a solution. I think this is the time to say, we know that we are causing those changes. And I think that what we have to realize is that we can make a difference. We can just find solutions and take action. And one thing that I find is that I teach here at UCI. I'm a scientist. I love my job. But, we teach, and at UCI, we're just educators, there and in the world. And, I hope that, I'm going to transfer something to you today. But I think that that's very important. I think the first way in which we can make a difference is through education. And young people, the students, they really want to change. They have a lot of energy. They're very smart. And they want to understand what's going on, with the planet and what they can do to fix it. And, to some extent, this young generation has also the economic power, because, they have, a lot of people that, can really make a difference. But it's important to know that everyone, I think that, when we were saying what can make a difference, each one of you can. And that's the only thing that's going to make a difference now. And it seems harder because, we are like older people, if you want, young people want to go there, want to change job. But I think that without each one of you, being aware and just try, to think about how we can change, we're not going to make it. It's not going to be the scientists. And I think that, His Holiness is a blessing that, he's just care and has so much compassion, like for the planet, and he brings this awareness. But each of you can really help. And we need to be all, it's not enough, the young people. We need to really create, that's the only thing that's going to make the system change.
Good.
Well,
we'll look to talk to you later about it. That'd be great.
Well,
We'd love to have a solution. Keep going.
Yeah, and so I think that this is really, this is really key because we have, if you wanted to switch from, I think that we should, we have to switch from an economy that is dominated, by, by oil and coal to one that is, take advantage of all the clean energy. And we can do, there is a lot of technology and there is a lot of knowledge that we have already. We need more, but we have to work, we have to invest energy to work on this, and I think that that's really key. And, but, is at the same time, it's an exciting time because we have in front a lot of innovation, a lot of, I tell the student, you should think about which job you can come out with that, is gonna make you, help and compassion for your planet, and also take give you an opportunity. And this is what it is. We're gonna have new jobs, we're gonna have new ways, to help our planet. So we just have to work and look for it.
The window is very short, if Dr. Ramanathan is right, 35 years, you said. So we're really looking at 2040, 2050, 2045, 2050, when you think that we're really going to start to see really even increased dramatic changes. You've been talking about a scenario for the end of the century, so this is kind of a rise in this direction, and it's going to start to, so there's not a lot of time. Cool. So then let's go to you, Mia, because Mia, you are someone who has been a successful activist. You've caused a lot of students to come together, to work for justice. This is it sounds as though the mood of the panel is this is a moral, this is a justice issue, a life or death issue for some communities, and it's also a financial issue. There seems to be the biggest problem seems to be how, and how do we pay for it? People, I think, everyone in this audience is frustrated, I would guess, that to be told that there's a problem that's coming in our lifetime, and for many of us, our lifetimes, and our children's lifetimes, and our grandchildren's lifetimes, and that we feel helpless because we don't know what to do. So we want to be told, what do we do? Mia, can you help us with that?
Sure, let me tell you what to do.
Have fun with this.
I have the solution. I'm glad we're starting here because it's so important actually to be putting this issue where it belongs, which is really centered on equity, on justice, on active compassion. We know that compassion is not a neutral state. It's not a state of passiveness, of watching. It's an active state of courage, of fighting for dignity and fighting for what we care most about in our hearts. And I actually today have a message. I mean, it's important to start with the science. It's important to start with what we know. And I think that we talk so much about this issue, about this crisis from the point of view of the disaster, the impending disaster. And I know how important it is to understand that, but I don't think that is what is motivating people to act. I think what is motivating people to act is the opportunity that we have to rebuild our communities, to rebuild our relationship to people on the planet. And so I have a message of hope, actually, and that is, from my experience of organizing for the last 25 years with communities who are already living with the root causes of the crisis. There is the impending sea level rise and heat waves and fires and also the impending economic impact where energy prices are getting higher, where housing is getting scarcer. But there are people who have been living on the front lines of the fossil fuel impacts for decades, for centuries. People who have been living next to mines, who have been living next to railroads that blow up with oil trains, people who live next to refineries, whose kids are suffering from asthma at the highest rates in the country. And my message of hope is actually, it is where people who have been organizing on the front lines, who have been literally putting their bodies on the lines to stop the impacts of the extractive industry. It is where those people who have been organizing for centuries and for the last decades, where the solutions for our new communities are coming from. So I think that's the most important thing for me, is that the climate justice fight here in the United States and around the world, it's not just a fight against the ecological crisis of our time. It's not just the fight against the impacts. It is a fight for a new economy. It is a fight for a new energy system, for a new democracy, for a new relationship to the planet and to each other, a new relationship to land, to water, to food that puts equity at the center of, and it's a world where people's lives actually matter, where the dignity of our lives actually matters. And that's happening already right now in communities who have been most impacted. They are the ones who are envisioning, who are creating the resilient communities that we need, who are creating the solutions that we need, because it is coming from a place of compassion, it's coming from a place of deep recognition that we have a dream that's bigger than the crisis that we're facing.
It's what you're talking about is this idea of a more heroic response versus a oh no defender kind of response. It's much more of a heroic for the future, for my children, for my grandchildren. I want to be one who stands up so they don't have to reflect, what did you do, Grandma?
That's right.
What did you do to help? Why did you do anything to prevent this from happening? To be the hero. So, it's terrific to hear that there are these communities that are guiding us. But I think we also want, in addition to those heroic communities, we all want to be the hero. We all want to know. And don't tell me, Dr. Ramanathan, that I've got to change my light bulb. Tell me something much more. I mean, tell me what do we do? You have this huge audience. What do we do? If what you're saying is true, what do we do to actually have an impact, be the hero?
There are many things each of us can do. The first thing I wanted to point out is that while the changes will be drastic 30, 40 years from now, because of the pollution we are putting today, so the action on cutting down the pollution has to start now.
Right.
And some of the simple steps is one of the biggest source of greenhouse gases is transportation. So just buying locally produced products would go a long way.
I agree.
And those of us who can afford it, this is really works in Southern California, rooftop solar. And somehow when I see in even analysis by economists and others, solar power is 2 to 3 times more expensive than coal, which is true if you don't amortize it properly. I have a rooftop solar in my house that would pay itself in another 2 years. I've had it for 5 years. And it's warranted for 15. So I'm making money the last 7 years. So, but the issue is capital cost. It's the same thing as a woman in a village in India. There are clean cook stoves, and we have done that. But the problem is, it's $80 for her, which is 6 weeks of her paycheck. That's exactly what my solar was. It was 6 weeks of my paycheck. It took me till I was 60 before I could do this. So the solutions are available. And the third is building is one of the main source of, of power consumption. Buildings. Shutting down your refrigerator when you don't need it, shutting down your lights. And if I may announce this, we are sitting